Stocks up again in bad news is good news world. And welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Chris, and this is your daily news. And I just want you to sort of get in that mindset. Remember, bad news is good news, and it'll help you make it through your day. Warren Buffett, I guess, is selling a whole bunch of stock. He's selling $8 billion worth. What does this mean for your investments? Well, remember, bad news is good news. So if he's selling, that's good news. Moreover, this was actually an interesting one. If you don't know, Buffett is a big on insurance. And this was saying here, Buffett bet on mild Florida storm faces serious test with Hurricane Idalia. Basically, he's buying, a bunch of insurance stock. And if the storm is bad in Florida, and for those of you in Florida, you can please chime in if you think it's going to be bad. You could face a ton of losses, right? This usually costs insurance companies a heck of a lot of money. And if you're exposed to that industry, you're in for a world of hurt. But bad news is good news. So therefore, stocks are up. Here's another one. U.S. second quarter growth cut to 2.1% on business spending. And basically what they do is that they oftentimes revise the numbers they initially give you. So I think the initial number, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was like 2.4% GDP growth in quarter two. Now they're saying it was 2.1, meaning slower than what they originally had said. And this was actually another thing that sort of writing on top of that in the bad news, good news world is that U.S. jobs growth slowed to 177,000 in August. And this was down, I think in July, it was like in the 300,000 range, like half of the growth in July. But remember, bad news is good news because the basic idea is that, hey, the Fed is raising rates, the economy is slowing, job creation is not there, is what it used to be. And so therefore, right, the raised Fed rates is working. Wall Street gets happy because that means that they may not necessarily have to raise rates anymore. But this is where it's like a double-edged sword, right? Because by not, raising rates, meaning that the economy is slowing, like how slow is it going to go? And this is sort of where there's always a talk, are they going to do a soft landing or not? Are you going to get the basically Goldilocks scenario, not too cold, not too hot? This is the actual chart here, though. It's pretty interesting if you want to just, get a sense of what the GDP has been doing lately. So back in 2021, quarter two growth, you were looking at above 6%. 2022, you're actually negative. You guys can see that here. And then quarter one, quarter two, you're looking at around the 2% range. My understanding, because I've been looking at these numbers, China grows around the 5-ish% range, so roughly double of what the Americans are at. We'll see what the GDP keeps doing. The interest rates are up, and they're going to stay elevated for quite some time to get inflation under control. But this is sort of the talk has been, is inflation in fact going to go down to the 2%? That the Fed wants. And that's going to be tough. This is another more breakdown of where GDP is growing or slowing. So the most recent one, and you guys can see it for yourself. So this bright green sort of bit right there, exports are down, and that's sort of what's dragging the GDP numbers down. So basically, we're not sending out as much stuff as we were before. However, one thing that is sending out is my book. So it's called Positive Angle. You can pick up a copy on Amazon. I know I mentioned to you guys, but if you haven't picked up, please do. I think you'll really like it. And I always get a lot of questions and comments about, my experience and stuff like that. I put it right there and check it out for yourself. But going back to the bad news is good news situation, this is probably the biggest headline of the day. Country Garden posts $7 billion loss and Chinese property crisis deepens. They made a fall. This is only 2 hours ago I was reading this. There is actually, they're not alone. I was digging through it, and I guess there's $38 billion that is going to be due in the next 4 months. It's not just from Country Garden. I think this is from all the developers. But my honest opinion is I don't think we know exactly how big it is. Because there's so many players involved, this is an estimate. It could be bigger, maybe it's smaller. But either way, just remember, keep reminding yourself that bad news is good news, right? So if Chinese property developers default, that's good news. It's a joke, of course. But yeah, I would watch this one because there's actually another interesting story recently as well, to where essentially Chinese money is actually going into American companies and UK companies. This was through Goldman Sachs, but they didn't report it was coming from China. And, I don't mean to say like, oh my God, Chinese money is evil. That not implying like that. But the more thing I want to imply is that the connections that, China has around the world and investments that they make is probably far deeper than any of us know. And so when you see these kind of defaults, like, major amounts of money, what, $38 billion that may or may not materialize, it could create real havoc around the world. So keep an eye on these things, even though, yes, we are in the bad news, good of the world. I do want to keep you informed. Moreover, there was an interesting thing here going on to where, again, remember, bad news is good news, but Mitch McConnell froze again. If you don't know who this is, if you're outside the USA, he's one of the senators in America. He's 81 years old. He froze earlier this year. He freezes again. I'll play you the clip, see for yourself.
This week has been good bipartisan cooperation and a string of
Are you good, Mitch?
Okay, Mitch? Anything else you want to say, or should we just go back to your office? Do you want to say anything else to the press?
Go back. Go ahead, John.
I'll take it. Let's go back to you.
Go ahead, John.
Senator, you're up for election in 3 short years. What are your thoughts on
I'm sorry, I had a hard time hearing you.
it? That's okay. What are your thoughts on running for re-election in 2026?
What are my thoughts about what?
Running for re-election in 2026?
That's
Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 2026? All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute. Senator. Benny.
okay.
Somebody else have a question? Please speak up.
So again, he's done it a couple times now, and my personal opinion is you got to remove this person. He's just getting too old. But we live in a democracy, and if voters either make bad decisions or they don't care, that's who you get. So that's our system. And moreover, which I wanted to show you guys this. I guess he fell. This was earlier this year, back in March. And again, if you have grandparents, he's 81 years old. I'm sure when you fall, it's a real serious thing. And his term ends, if you're curious, in 2027. I mean, what's it, 3-4 years from now? He's been doing this for 38 years, and he says, "Hey, I'm gonna finish my term," but I don't know. He's too old. I hope, and I can't control voters out there in Kentucky, but I hope you guys rise up and say, "Hey, you're just too old," But I guess bad news is good news is how you look at it. And moreover, this was kind of a funny headline. I'll read it here. Donald Trump is facing 91 criminal charges and a range of civil lawsuits. Here's how his legal problems are lining up. And secondly, Trump could clinch the nomination before the GOP knows if he's a felon. But remember, bad news is good news. And for some voters, they're like, you know what? Being a felon, having a mugshot, that's cool because bad news is good news. So anyway, love to hear your thoughts on these ones. And in particular, we got slowing GDP growth or essentially, lower numbers than what we originally were reported. Then you have the China country garden situation, which I think could be a real major one. So we'll keep a track on that one. And then obviously the politician thing, which is essentially we just have too many old people. And I hope we get new blood. But we face a couple problems, either, voters making bad decisions or voters are apathetic, meaning that they don't participate. So I try my best to keep you informed, and I want you to participate because you can make the world better. But if you do want bad news to be good news, you come here to the right place, and we'll try to cheer you up. So anyway, thanks again for watching, everyone, and I'll catch you in the next video.